Officer Daniel Mercer had been on the force for 11 years, long enough to know the difference between a normal call and the kind that stayed with you, the kind that followed you home, the kind that sat in the corner of your bedroom at 3:14 in the morning while you stared at the ceiling, pretending not to see it. This was one of those. It started on a Thursday night in late October. Cold wind, empty roads, a thin mist hanging over the town like something alive. Mercer was halfway through the worst gas station coffee he'd ever tasted when dispatch came through his radio. Unit 12, respond to County Road 9 near Briar. Possible disturbance. Caller reports screaming from abandoned property. Mercer set the cup down. Unit 12 en route. Everybody in town knew Briar Road. Nobody liked talking about it for too long. There were 6 houses on that stretch. 5 were occupied. The 6th sat at the very end of the road behind dead trees and a rusted chain-link fence. A 2-story farmhouse with boarded windows and a collapsed barn beside it. Locals called it the Wren House. Officially, it had belonged to a man named Elias Wren. Unofficially, it belonged to every nightmare the town had been trying to forget for the last 8 years. Elias Wren had been the prime suspect in the disappearances of 7 people. No bodies, no conviction. Just blood in the basement, a locked room upstairs, and enough missing person flyers pinned around town to wallpaper the whole station. Then one night, before police could bring him in again, Wren vanished. Just disappeared. No car, no note, no sign of forced entry. Nothing. After that, kids dared each other to go near the property. Hunters stayed away from the woods behind it. And every now and then, someone swore they saw a light on in one of the upstairs windows. Mercer never believed the ghost story version of it. He believed in real things. Broken locks, mud prints, bad people. But as he turned down Briar Road that night, even he felt it. That pressure. That wrongness. Like the air itself was warning him to turn around. His headlights swept across the tree line. The fence appeared. Then the house. Dark. Still. Too still. Mercer parked by the gate and stepped out, flashlight in one hand, the other resting near his holster. The wind moved through the trees with a dry, rattling sound. He clicked on the flashlight and aimed it at the house. The front door was open. Just slightly. Maybe 6 inches. Moving a little in the wind. Mercer frowned. That door had been sealed after the last search. He remembered the chain, the padlock. Now both were on the ground. Bent. Like something had pulled them apart. Not cut. Pulled. He raised the radio. Dispatch Unit 12 on scene at Wren property. Front entry is compromised. Requesting backup. Static. Mercer adjusted the radio. Dispatch, copy? More static. Then a voice. Very faint. Not dispatch. Not even close. Help me. Mercer froze. The voice had come through the radio, but not like a transmission. It sounded wet. Close. Like someone whispering directly into his ear. Please. He stepped back and stared at the speaker on his shoulder mic. Nothing. Just static again. Mercer told himself it was interference. Old equipment. Bad signal. But his heartbeat had already changed. He drew his weapon. Then he started toward the house. The porch groaned under his boots. His flashlight moved across splintered wood, peeling paint, a dead porch swing hanging crooked from one chain. And then he saw the marks. Long scratches on the doorframe. 5 lines. Deep. Too deep for fingernails. Mercer pushed the door open. The smell hit him first. Rot. Mold. Damp wood. And something else underneath. Something animal. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dark hallway. Dust floated in the air. Wallpaper sagged from the walls like loose skin. The house should have been empty. Instead, it felt occupied. Mercer cleared the first room. Old living room. Broken television. Sofa full of exposed springs. Nothing. Then the dining room. A long table, 3 chairs, a 4th chair knocked over on its side. Fresh mud on the floor. Mercer crouched and touched it. Still wet. His stomach tightened. Someone had been here recently. Maybe they still were. He moved toward the kitchen. Cabinets hanging open. Sink full of black water. A single plate on the counter. Clean. That was wrong enough on its own. Everything else in the house looked abandoned for years. The plate looked like it had been washed an hour ago. Mercer heard a sound above him. A slow creak, like someone putting weight on an old floorboard. He looked up. 2nd floor. The sound came again. 1 step, then another. He aimed his flashlight toward the staircase. "Police!" he shouted. "Come down now with your hands where I can see them." Silence. Mercer waited. Nothing. Then, footsteps. Fast. Running across the 2nd floor from one side of the house to the other. Mercer rushed to the stairs, weapon up. The wood groaned under every step. At the landing, he turned left, sweeping the beam down a narrow hallway lined with doors. One was open. At the end of the hall, a room with no light. He moved slowly toward it. Something dripped nearby. Water, maybe. Maybe not. He reached the open doorway and shined his light inside. Empty bedroom. Stained mattress. Curtains rotted away. No one there. But the far wall was covered in photographs. Mercer stepped inside. The pictures were pinned up in rows. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Most were old Polaroids. Some were blurry. Some taken at a distance. All of them showed people. Walking to their cars. Standing in grocery store aisles. Looking through their windows at night. There were children. Teenagers. Couples. Old men on front porches. People who had no idea they were being watched. Mercer's flashlight slowed, then stopped. One photo near the center. A man getting out of a patrol car. Same uniform. Same face. Him. Mercer stared at it. It was recent. Taken outside the station lot. Another photo beside it showed him unlocking his apartment door. Another carrying groceries. Another sitting at the diner on Main Street. His throat went dry. Someone hadn't just been in this house. Someone had been watching him. For days. Maybe weeks. A soft sound came from behind him. Mercer turned. Nobody in the doorway. But something had changed. One of the photos on the wall had fallen. He stepped closer to pick it up. It was a picture of the Wren house, taken from the woods, the upstairs window. And in that window, someone standing there. Tall, thin, bent at the shoulders, watching the camera, watching him. Mercer heard the voice again, this time not through the radio, from the hallway. "Officer." It sounded like a woman, weak, terrified. Mercer stepped back into the hall. "Who's there?" No answer. Then again. "Please help me." It was coming from the room across the hall. The door was shut. Mercer moved toward it. "Ma'am, if you're in there, step away from the door." A shaky sob came from the other side. He tested the knob. Locked. "Can you open it?" No response. Then, very quietly, "I can't." Mercer backed up and kicked the door. The frame cracked. Second kick. The door flew inward. His flashlight sliced into the room. Empty. No woman. No closet big enough to hide in. Just bare floorboards. Dust. A rocking chair in the corner. Moving. Very slowly. Mercer stared at it. Then his flashlight dropped to the floor. Fresh footprints. Bare feet. They started near the far wall, crossed the room, and stopped right in front of him. As if someone had been standing there. As if something had been standing there. Watching. He backed out of the room. His breathing was too loud now. The whole house felt tighter, smaller, like it was closing around him. Mercer keyed the radio again. "Dispatch, officer needs immediate backup at Briar Road. Possible suspect inside." Only static. Then, his own voice, crackling back at him. Possible suspect inside. He lowered the radio slowly. Then the copied voice came again. But this time it didn't stop where he had. It kept going. And he's alone. Mercer's blood turned to ice. A floorboard creaked at the far end of the hall. He swung his flashlight. For just a second he saw it. A face peeking around the corner. Too pale. Eyes too large. Smile too wide. Then it slipped away. Mercer went after it. Every instinct screamed not to, but training pushed him forward. He rounded the corner into another hall, narrower and darker than the first. The wallpaper here had been clawed open in strips. The ceiling bowed low. At the end was a closed door with heavy locks bolted across it. This was the room from the old case file. The one Elias Wren had refused to let police enter without a warrant. By the time they came back with one, he was gone. Mercer shined the light over the locks. Most were rusted. One was new, bright steel, recently installed. Something moved behind the door. Not footsteps, not exactly. A dragging sound. Slow. Then a thump. Mercer swallowed hard. He should have waited for backup. He knew that. But backup wasn't coming. Not tonight. He unlatched the first lock, then the second, then the chain. The dragging sound stopped. Silence. Absolute silence. Mercer rested a hand on the knob, counted to 3, then opened it. The room beyond was larger than it should have been. That was his first thought. The outside of the house did not match what he was seeing. This room stretched far back into darkness like it had been carved into the bones of the house. The floor was dirt, not wood. The walls were lined with hanging strips of old fabric. At least, he thought it was fabric. He didn't look too closely. There were antlers nailed to beams, animal skulls, bundles of dried herbs, jars filled with dark liquid and cloudy shapes he couldn't make out. Symbols had been scratched into the walls. Not words. Something older. Something wrong. And in the middle of the room, a chair, bolted to the ground, leather straps hanging from the arms. Mercer's flashlight shook. This wasn't just a killer's hideout. This was a place built for something else. A ritual. A trap. He stepped inside. The temperature dropped immediately, cold enough that his breath fogged in front of him. The smell got worse. Earth. Decay. Wet fur. Then he saw the tunnel. It opened in the back wall, half hidden by a hanging tarp, wide enough for a man to crouch through. Fresh dirt piled beneath it. Something had been going in and out. Often. Mercer moved closer. His flashlight beam fell across a pile beside the tunnel mouth. Clothes. A sheriff's jacket. Old sneakers. A child's backpack. A woman's scarf. Not arranged. Discarded. Like shed skin. He heard breathing behind him. He spun around. Nobody there. Then again. Closer. He turned toward the tunnel. The breathing was coming from inside. Slow. Heavy. Almost human. And then a voice. From the darkness inside the earth. His mother's voice. Danny? Mercer stumbled backward. No. No, no, no. His mother had died 3 years ago. Heart failure. He'd held her hand in the hospital. He knew that voice better than his own. Danny, honey. The voice trembled. Please, I'm cold. Mercer felt tears sting the corners of his eyes before anger shoved them away. Show yourself! Silence. Then something crawled forward. Not all the way out, just enough for the light to catch it. A hand. Pale. Long fingers. Bent wrong. It gripped the dirt at the mouth of the tunnel. Then a face began to emerge. At first it looked almost human. Then it kept coming. Too slowly. Too far. Like the shape didn't know where to stop. Its cheekbones jutted too sharp. Its mouth stretched into a smile that split too wide. Its eyes were wet and black and reflective, like an animal caught in headlights. And over all of it, like a mask that didn't fit, was his mother's face. Not perfect. Close enough to hurt. Mercer fired. The shot exploded in the room. The thing recoiled with a shriek unlike anything he'd heard before. Not human. Not animal. Something between both and worse than either. It vanished backward into the tunnel with impossible speed. Mercer backed toward the door, pulse hammering in his throat. The house above him groaned. Then came footsteps, all around him. On the floor overhead, in the walls, behind the door. Too many footsteps, like the whole house had suddenly filled up. Mercer slammed the heavy room door shut and threw the locks back on with shaking hands. Something hit the other side immediately. Hard. The wood bowed. Another hit. Then another. Mercer ran. Down the hallway, past the photo room, toward the stairs. As he reached the landing, he heard voices from below. 2 voices. Male. Talking softly in the front hall. Back up. Relief hit so hard it almost dropped him. "Up here!" he shouted. "Armed suspect in the house!" The voices stopped. Then one called back. "Mercer?" He knew that voice. Officer Tom Bennett, his partner from 2 years back, transferred to another county. Mercer hurried down the stairs. "Bennett?" No answer. He reached the bottom. Flashlight beam cutting across the front hall. Empty. Nobody there. Then, from the living room, a low chuckle. Mercer turned. The room was dark, but someone was standing near the broken sofa. Tall. In a police uniform. Back turned. "Bennett?" The figure slowly looked over its shoulder. It had Tom Bennett's face, or a version of it. The skin was too loose around the jaw. The eyes didn't blink, and when it smiled, the cheeks split farther than they should. Mercer raised the gun. The thing opened its mouth, not to speak, to copy. It repeated Mercer's own voice perfectly. "Bennett?" Then another voice came out of the same mouth. A child's. "Help me." Then a woman's. "Please." Then Tom Bennett's. "You shouldn't have come alone." It took one step toward him. Its knees bent backward. Mercer fired twice. The thing jerked, screamed, and dropped to all fours. Its body twisted with snapping sounds as it ran sideways through the living room wall shadows and disappeared. Mercer didn't wait. He bolted for the front door. He hit the porch and almost fell down the steps. Cold night air slammed into him. He ran for the cruiser. The driver's side door was open. He hadn't left it open. The interior light was on. Mercer slowed. Something was sitting in the passenger seat. He aimed the flashlight through the windshield. A person. Head tilted down. Long, dark hair. One of the missing women from the case file. He recognized her from the wall of photos at the station. Lena Voss. Missing 8 years. Her face lifted slowly toward him. Her mouth was stitched into a smile with something black and shiny. Mercer staggered back, and the thing in the passenger seat slammed its face against the window with a snarl. The stitched smile ripped wide open. Inside was not a mouth. Just darkness. Mercer turned and ran away from the cruiser, toward the gate, toward the road. Behind him, he heard the car door open. Then bare feet hitting wet grass. Then more. Not one set. Several. Mercer didn't look back. He hit the gate, shoved through it, and sprinted onto the road. His lungs burned. His legs felt weak, but the sound behind him was getting closer. Fast. too fast. He dared one glance over his shoulder. Moonlight flashed across shapes moving along the fence line. Human-sized, some crawling, some limping upright. All wrong. One wore part of the deputy's uniform. One had a woman's hair hanging over a face too pale to be real. One moved like a dog until it rose onto two legs. Mercer ran harder. Halfway down Briar Road, he saw headlights, a truck coming toward him. He stepped into the road, waving both arms. The truck screeched to a stop. A middle-aged man leaned out the window, terrified. "Officer? Lock your doors!" Mercer shouted. "Drive! Go, now!" The man looked past him. His face drained white. Then he floored it. Mercer jumped aside as the truck tore past. He turned. The road behind him was empty. No shapes, no footsteps, nothing. Just the dark line of Briar Road leading back to the house. Mercer kept moving until he hit the main highway and found signal enough to call for real backup. This time, dispatch answered. Normal voice, normal static. He must have sounded insane trying to explain it. Trespasser on Old Wren property. Possible homicide evidence. Urgent response needed. He left out the rest. What else was he supposed to say? That the house was wearing people? That something underground knew his mother's voice? That the missing weren't missing in the way anyone thought. 3 units arrived within 20 minutes. Mercer stayed outside the fence while they went in. He wanted to warn them. He did. But every version of the truth sounded impossible. So he said only this: do not go alone, and do not answer if you hear someone you know. They gave him strange looks, then went inside anyway. 10 minutes passed, then 15. No radio response. No movement. Nothing. Mercer grabbed a shotgun from one of the cruisers and went back in with the 4th officer, a woman named Ruiz. The front door hung open wider now. The hallway looked the same. Almost. The mud tracks in the dining room were gone. The clean plate in the kitchen was gone too. And upstairs? The wall of photos had been stripped bare. Just hundreds of pinholes left behind. Ruiz whispered, "Where the hell did everybody go?" Mercer didn't answer. They found the 1st officer in the upstairs locked room, alive, curled into the dirt floor behind the chair, hyperventilating. Wouldn't speak, wouldn't look at anyone, just kept muttering the same words over and over. It had my brother's face. The 2nd was found outside by the barn, wandering in circles. Gun missing. Hands over his ears, saying, "That's not my wife. That's not my wife. That's not my wife." The 3rd officer was never found. Not that night. Not ever. His cruiser cam later showed him walking calmly into the woods behind the house at 1:13 a.m., as if following someone. As if he trusted whatever was waiting there. The official report said he likely suffered a mental break during a high-stress search operation and got lost in the forest. Mercer knew better. They all did. But nobody wanted to say it. The county sealed off the Wren property by sunrise. State investigators came in. Then federal. Then some other people with no uniforms and too many questions. Mercer was pulled from active duty for 2 weeks. Mandatory psych evaluation. Administrative leave. The therapist asked him if he'd been sleeping. He lied. Asked if he experienced guilt from the old Wren case. He lied again. Asked if he believed what he saw was real. Mercer didn't answer that one, because the truth was simple. Real wasn't the right word anymore. 3 weeks later, the house burned down. At least, that's what the papers said. Electrical fire, structure collapse, no casualties. Mercer drove out to Briar Road the next morning and watched the smoke rise from blackened beams. The farmhouse was gone. The barn, too. The ground where the locked room had been was caved in. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt watched. That same pressure, like the thing in the tunnel had simply moved deeper. Not died. Just changed houses. Life went on. At least on the outside. Mercer went back to work. Took calls. Wrote reports. Stood in grocery store lines pretending not to check the reflections in freezer doors. He started sleeping with the TV on. Then with all the lights on. Then barely sleeping at all. Every noise in his apartment became a warning. Pipes ticking. Floorboards settling. A neighbor laughing down the hall. None of it sounded right anymore. Because once you hear a thing copy a human voice perfectly, once you hear your dead mother call your name from underground, you stop trusting sound. Then came the calls. Unknown number. Always after midnight. Mercer never answered at first. Just let it ring. But every voicemail was the same. Static, breathing, then a voice he knew. Sometimes Bennett. Sometimes the missing officer. Once, unmistakably, his own voice whispering, "You left me there." He changed his number. The calls kept coming. He moved apartments. The calls kept coming. One night he came home from shift and found his bedroom window open. He was sure he'd locked it. On the floor beneath it was a single Polaroid. He picked it up with numb fingers. It showed him asleep in bed, taken from inside the room. Mercer quit the force 2 days later. Packed up, left town. Drove 6 hours north to stay in a cabin his uncle owned by the lake. No neighbors, no sirens, no Briar Road. For a while, it almost worked. The woods were quieter there, cleaner. He chopped wood, fished in the mornings, kept his phone off, started breathing like a normal person again. Then winter came. The first snowfall buried the road to the cabin and turned the whole world white and silent. On the third night of the storm, someone knocked on the door. 3 slow knocks. Mercer froze by the fireplace. Nobody should have been out there. Not in that weather. The knock came again. Then a voice. Very soft. "Danny?" Mercer closed his eyes. No, not again. He grabbed the shotgun from beside the couch and stepped toward the door. The voice came again. His mother's voice, shivering. "Honey, let me in." Mercer stood there trembling, hand on the lock. Every cell in his body screamed to open it, to see her, to make impossible things possible one more time. Instead, he looked through the peephole. At first, he saw only snow. Then a face slowly rose into view. His mother, smiling. Too wide, too still. Snow clung to her hair. Her eyes were black, not dark, black, like holes. Mercer stumbled backward as something hit the door hard enough to shake the frame. Then another hit. Then nails dragged down the wood with a long, screeching scrape. The voice outside dropped the sweet tone, dropped the human shape. What came next sounded huge, wet, angry. It circled the cabin for an hour. He heard it on the roof, under the porch, breathing outside the bedroom wall. Then, just before dawn, silence. Mercer didn't move until sunlight reached the windows. When he finally opened the door, he found tracks in the snow. They started as human footprints, bare feet. Then halfway across the yard, they changed. The prints lengthened, deepened, became something like paws, then disappeared at the tree line. Mercer sold the cabin that spring. Some stories end with the monster dying, with the curse broken, with the survivor finally safe. This isn't one of those stories, because some things don't want to kill you right away. Some things want to keep you, study you, wear down the edges of your mind until every familiar voice becomes a trap. Mercer lives in a different state now, different name, different apartment. He keeps no photographs in his home, no mirrors facing the bed, no voicemails saved. He never answers unknown numbers. He never opens the door unless he's expecting someone. And every night before he sleeps, he checks 3 things: the locks, the windows, and the dark corners of every room where something tall enough might be standing. He still hears it sometimes. Not often, just enough. A voice in the next aisle of a store that sounds like someone who died years ago. A laugh outside his building that matches one from the station break room. A whisper through a phone line with no caller ID. And once, just once, he woke up at 2:11 in the morning because someone was speaking softly from the foot of his bed. He didn't open his eyes. He knew better by then. He just listened. It was using his voice again, calm, patient, almost amused. It said, "I found your new house." Mercer hasn't slept much since. Maybe that's why he finally told this story. Maybe he wanted someone else to know. Maybe he wanted proof that if he disappears, it wasn't because he wandered off. It wasn't stress. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't madness. It was something from the last house on Briar Road. Something that lived under Elias Wren's floorboards. Something that learned the shape of people by crawling inside their voices. And if you ever hear someone you love calling to you from the other side of a locked door, from the woods, from the crawl space, from a radio filled with static, do not answer. Do not follow. And whatever you do, if they're smiling before you open the door, run. Because maybe Elias Wren wasn't the killer after all. Maybe he was just the first man stupid enough to let it in. And maybe, right now, it's learning your voice too. Nobody checked into the Blackthorn Hotel by accident. You either booked it because it was cheap or because you didn't know better. It stood at the edge of downtown like a building the city had forgotten to tear down. Tall, narrow, all dark brick and black iron balconies. The kind of place that looked elegant from far away and sick when you got close. The gold lettering over the entrance had faded. The revolving door stuck if you pushed too slowly. And the windows on the upper floors always looked darker than the rest of the street, like the light didn't reach them the same way. The Blackthorn had been around for over 100 years. That was what the brochures said. They used words like historic charm, classic architecture, timeless atmosphere. Nobody mentioned the suicides. Nobody mentioned the fire in 1974. Nobody mentioned the woman in room 1308. If you asked the staff, they smiled too quickly and changed the subject. If you asked locals, they usually said the same thing. Don't stay past one night. Most people laughed that off. Claire Donnelly did too. At least, at first. Claire was 26, a travel writer trying very hard to become something bigger than a travel writer. She'd started with blog posts, then small magazine features, then a short video series about forgotten places with strange histories, old theaters, abandoned gas stations, ghost towns. Not because she believed in ghosts. She didn't. But mystery got clicks, and clicks got money. Her latest assignment was supposed to be easy. 1 weekend in the city, 2 nights in the Blackthorn Hotel, some photos, some history, a light little article with just enough creepy flavor to make people share it. That was the plan. She arrived just after 8 p.m. on a rainy Friday in October. The rain had turned the sidewalks black and shining. Traffic hissed through the intersection outside. The hotel stood under a flickering marquee that hadn't been changed in years. There was no doorman, no bellhop, just a dim lobby visible through the glass. Claire rolled her suitcase through the revolving door and immediately felt it. That strange drop in temperature, that hush. The city noise seemed to die the second the door closed behind her. The lobby was beautiful in the way old things can be beautiful when they're just barely being held together. Black and white marble floor, a chandelier hanging too low, red wallpaper with a repeating gold pattern, a piano in the corner, not playing, just sitting there like it was waiting. A grandfather clock ticked near the elevators. Every tick sounded a little too loud. At the front desk stood a man in a charcoal suit, thin, pale, hair slicked neatly back. He looked about 50, or maybe 70. It was hard to tell. His name tag said, Mr. Vale. He smiled as Claire approached. Not warmly. Politely. Like he had practiced the exact amount of friendliness required. "Welcome to the Blackthorn," he said. His voice was soft and smooth. Claire smiled back. "Checking in, Claire Donnelly." Mr. Vale typed something into the computer. The keys clicked too sharply in the quiet lobby. "2 nights," he said. "Room 1106. He slid a brass key across the desk. Not a key card. A real key. Attached to a heavy black tag with the room number engraved in gold. Claire picked it up. "Hold school," she said. Mr. Vale gave the smallest nod. "We find it encourages our guests not to lose themselves." Claire laughed. He didn't. That should have been the first warning. Maybe it was. But Claire was used to odd people in odd places. She signed the register, then glanced at the old brass room board on the wall behind the desk. Small numbered hooks, most empty, a few with keys hanging. She scanned the numbers automatically. 1102, 1009, 1204, 1308. No, there was no 1308. No rooms in the 1300s at all. She looked again. The board jumped from 1209 to 1401. Claire raised an eyebrow. No 13th floor? Mr. Vale's fingers stopped moving. Just for a second. Then he smiled again. The hotel has 12 floors, he said. Claire looked toward the elevators. Above the elevator doors was a floor indicator. The brass numbers clearly ran from 1 to 14, skipping nothing. Claire almost pointed that out, then didn't. Something about the way Mr. Vale was looking at her made the question feel heavier than it should have. "Is the restaurant still open?" she asked instead. "Until 10, he said, though I would advise against dining too late." "Why?" Mr. Vale's smile dimmed. "The hotel can be noisy at night." Before Claire could ask what that meant, an elevator dinged. The left doors slid open. Empty inside. Old mirrored walls. Dark wood trim. A faint smell of dust and something floral. Old perfume, maybe. Claire grabbed her suitcase. "Thanks." Mr. Vale inclined his head. "Sleep lightly, Miss Donnelly." Claire gave him a puzzled look, then got in the elevator. The doors slid shut. For a second, she watched the lobby disappear through the narrowing gap. Mr. Vale was still smiling, still watching her. The elevator began to rise with a soft mechanical groan. Claire pressed 11. The button glowed amber. As the elevator passed the upper floors, the lights flickered once, then steadied. Claire checked her phone. No signal. "Of course," she muttered. Then the elevator slowed. The floor indicator lit up. 12. Then 13. Claire frowned. She had pressed 11. The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors did not open right away. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the doors slid apart. A hallway waited beyond. Dim. Still. Wallpaper with a dark green pattern. One flickering wall sconce. A long runner carpet. And absolute silence. No voices. No housekeeping carts. No televisions from behind the doors. Just the hall. Claire stared out. There was no number on the wall. No floor marker. Nothing identifying where she was. The elevator gave a soft chime. Waiting. Claire pressed door close. Nothing. She pressed it again. Still nothing. The elevator remained open, like it wanted her to step out. She gave a small, nervous laugh, then pressed 11 again. The button blinked. The doors finally closed. The elevator moved. 1 floor down, then opened on 11. This time the hallway looked normal, brighter, cleaner. Soft beige wallpaper, muted blue carpet, a housekeeping cart parked near the ice machine. Much better. Claire wheeled her suitcase into the hall and looked back at the elevator. The indicator above it now read 11. Nothing weird, nothing impossible. She told herself it was just an old building, old elevator, bad wiring. No big deal. Room 1106 was halfway down the hall. When she unlocked the door, she was pleasantly surprised. The room was nicer than she expected. Small but elegant. Dark wood furniture. A queen bed with white sheets. Heavy curtains over the window. An old writing desk. A bathroom with black tile and gold fixtures. It smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older beneath that. Like dried roses. Claire set down her things and opened the curtains. The city spread below in wet lights and reflections. She took a few photos for the article. Room details. The bed. The skyline. The hallway sign outside. Then she headed down to the restaurant on the second floor. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Only 2 other tables occupied. A couple in business clothes whispering over wine. An elderly woman eating soup by herself near the window. Claire noticed the woman several times, not because she did anything strange, because she kept looking at Claire. Not openly, just quick little glances over the rim of her spoon, like she wanted to say something. When Claire finished eating and stood to leave, the woman called softly, "Miss?" Claire turned. The woman motioned her over. Up close, she looked very old. Hands trembling slightly. Pearl earrings. A long black coat draped over the back of her chair. Her eyes were sharp. Too sharp. "You're staying upstairs," she said. Claire smiled politely. "Yeah, 11th floor." The woman's mouth tightened. "Don't answer if someone knocks after midnight." Claire blinked. "What?" The woman leaned closer. Her perfume smelled like powder and rain. "No matter who they sound like," she said. Then she sat back as if she hadn't said anything strange at all and resumed eating her soup. Claire stared for a second, then laughed uncertainly. "Okay." The woman did not smile. Claire left the restaurant with that sentence stuck in her head. By 11:45 p.m., she was back in her room editing notes on her laptop. Rain tapped gently at the window. The old pipes in the walls clicked now and then. Every so often, the elevator dinged faintly down the hall. Otherwise, quiet. Claire worked until 12:17. Then the power flickered. Once, her laptop screen dimmed. The bedside lamp blinked. Then everything steadied again. Claire sighed and stretched. She closed the laptop and got ready for bed. At 12:31 a.m., she turned out the light. For a few minutes, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening. The hotel had a sound to it, a low, constant hum beneath everything else. Plumbing. Ventilation. Age. But around 12:46, another sound joined it. Footsteps. Out in the hall. Slow. Measured. Not unusual in a hotel, except these steps didn't pass by. They stopped right outside her door. Claire stayed still. Maybe another guest had the wrong room. Maybe someone was listening for their partner inside. She waited. Then, 3 knocks. Soft. Evenly spaced. Claire sat up. A second later, a man's voice came through the door. "Housekeeping." Claire frowned. At 12:46? No. She almost called back that she didn't need anything. Then she remembered the old woman downstairs. Don't answer if someone knocks after midnight. Claire stayed quiet. Another 3 knocks. This time a different voice. A woman. Gentle. "Miss Donnelly?" Claire felt a little jolt of surprise. How did they know her name? Then the voice came again. "Front desk, we need you to come downstairs." Claire swung her legs over the bed. The voice sounded calm, reasonable. Still, something felt off. She walked quietly to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway outside was empty. Completely empty. No housekeeping cart. No staff. No one at all. Claire's skin prickled. She backed away from the door. Then the handle rattled once. Just once. Very gently. As if whoever was outside wanted her to know they could try it. Claire didn't move. After a few seconds, the footsteps resumed, slowly walking away down the hall. Only then did she realize she had stopped breathing. She let out a shaky breath and grabbed her phone. Still no signal. She tried the room phone. Deadline. Not even static. She stared at it, then laughed once under her breath. A scared laugh. This is ridiculous. She was tired. That was all. Old building, old wiring, weird staff, weird guest. That was the story. Not ghosts, not anything else. She returned to bed, though sleep came harder now. At 1:12 a.m., she was almost drifting off when she heard singing. Very faint. A woman humming somewhere above her. No, not above. Inside the room. Claire's eyes opened. The humming was coming from the bathroom. Soft, tuneless. The door to the bathroom stood half open. She was sure she had left it open wider than that. The dark gap between door and frame felt full somehow. Occupied. Claire sat frozen. The humming stopped. Silence. Then slowly, very slowly, the bathroom light clicked on. Warm yellow light spilled across the carpet. Claire's mouth went dry. She hadn't turned it on. Nobody had. She reached blindly for the bedside lamp and snapped it on. The room jumped into light. The humming did not resume. For a long time, she just stared at the bathroom door. Finally, she forced herself to stand, walked to it, and pushed it fully open. Empty. Sink, toilet, tub, everything normal. Except the mirror. It was fogged. Not completely. Just enough for words to stand out, traced clearly through the mist. Don't go upstairs. Claire stood there so long, her own reflection slowly appeared around the message. Her face. Her wide eyes. The bathroom light buzzing faintly overhead. Then another shape in the reflection behind her. Tall. Standing in the hotel room doorway. Claire spun around. No one there. When she looked back at the mirror, the message was gone. Only fog. Only her reflection. That was the moment fear stopped feeling silly. Because there is a point where even the most rational person knows when fear has become the smartest thing in the room. Claire grabbed her jacket, her phone, and the room key. She was not staying in 1106 another minute. She went to the door, then paused. The old woman's warning. The thing at the door. The empty hallway. She listened carefully. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Claire unlocked the door and stepped into the hall. The corridor was still and warmly lit, completely ordinary. Too ordinary. She headed for the elevators. Her shoes sank softly into the carpet. The elevator indicator showed the car resting on floor 1. She pressed the button. Waited. Nothing. Pressed again. Still nothing. Then, down at the far end of the hallway, she heard a door click open. Claire looked up. A woman stood at the end of the hall near room 1119. Long, dark hair, thin white nightgown, bare feet. Her head was tilted down so her hair hid most of her face. At first, Claire thought it was another guest. Then she noticed something wrong. The woman wasn't standing in front of 1119. She was standing halfway through it, as if the door were open through her body, or as if she were not entirely there. Claire took a step back. The woman slowly lifted her head. Her face was burned. Not all of it, just one side. The skin on her cheek and neck looked glossy and ruined. The other side looked almost beautiful. She opened her mouth, and black water spilled down the front of her gown. Claire ran. Not to the elevator, to the stairwell. The stairwell door was heavy metal. She shoved through it and almost cried with relief when it opened. Concrete steps, emergency lighting. Real. Solid. She hurried downward toward the lobby. 11th floor to 10th. 10th to 9th. At the landing between 9 and 8, she stopped. There was music. Piano music. Very faint, coming from somewhere lower in the hotel. Not random notes. A real melody. Something old and sad. Claire stood listening. Then she heard something else. Footsteps above her in the stairwell. Slow. Measured. The exact same pace as the footsteps outside her door. Claire looked up the shaft. Only darkness winding upward. The steps continued. One floor above. Then stopping. Whoever it was had reached the landing over her. Claire didn't wait to see. She kept moving down. 8. 7. 6. And then the stairwell door on the 6th floor banged open. Claire nearly screamed. A man in a bellhop uniform staggered inside. Young, thin, his face ash-gray with panic. He looked about 19. He shut the door behind him and shoved a cart against it. Only then did he notice Claire. They stared at each other. "You're real?" he whispered. Claire swallowed. "Yes." He let out a shaky breath. "Oh, thank God." "Who are you?" "My name's Owen," he said. "I work here." He looked terrified, more terrified than she felt, which was saying something. "What's happening?" Claire asked. Owen laughed once. A tiny, broken sound. "You stayed past 1. "What does that mean?" He looked down the stairs, then back up, like checking both directions for something approaching. "It gets worse after 1, he said. You're not supposed to be in the halls. Claire stared at him. What is this place? Owen rubbed both hands over his face. The hotel changes at night, he said. Not every night, just some nights. Once it starts, it keeps people where it wants them. That's insane. I know. I saw a woman on the 11th floor. Owen nodded too quickly. Don't look at them too long. What do you mean, them? He hesitated, then said very quietly, the ones who never checked out. Claire felt that sentence like ice water down her back. From above them came another footstep. Then another. Still descending. Owen flinched. We have to move. To the lobby? He shook his head. No elevators, no lobby. If the night manager's still there, he won't help. Claire thought of Mr. Vale. His smile. Sleep lightly. Something inside her sank. Then where? Laundry basement, Owen said. There's an old service exit. Sometimes it works. Sometimes? Owen gave her a bleak look. That's the best I've got. They hurried down the stairs together. The footsteps above followed. Never rushing, never stopping for long, just keeping pace. At the third-floor landing, Claire looked up through the center gap of the stairwell. She saw a shape leaning over the railing 4 floors above. Tall, black suit. Too still, watching them descend. The face was hard to make out in the dim light, but the smile caught it. White and thin. Mr. Vale. Claire nearly missed a step. Owen grabbed her arm. Don't stop. They reached the basement level and pushed through the door. The air changed instantly. Colder. Damp. The basement was a maze of service corridors, linen carts, old pipes, and humming fluorescent strips. Industrial and ugly compared to the rest of the hotel. For the first time all night, it felt less haunted simply because it was so ordinary. They passed the laundry room. Huge washers, stacks of sheets, a buzzing vending machine. Then Owen led her down a narrower corridor lined with old storage cages. This place used to connect to the building next door, he said, before they sealed it. What happens here? Claire asked. Really? Owen kept walking. Nobody knows exactly. That's not an answer. He stopped at a rusted cage gate and pulled a ring of keys from his pocket. While he fumbled for the right one, he said, There was a fire on 13 in 1974. Claire stared. 13? Owen nodded. So there is a 13th floor. He got the gate open. There was, he said. Officially, they closed it. Unofficially, he trailed off. Claire followed him inside the storage area. Dusty furniture, old paintings turned toward the wall, rolled carpets, the smell of mildew and old smoke. Owen kept talking as if saying it quickly made it less real. They say the fire trapped people upstairs, guests, staff, a wedding party. Management locked the elevators to keep flames from spreading, but some people were still on the floor when they sealed it. Claire's stomach turned. They locked people in? That's the story. And the hotel just reopened? Years later, new owners, renovations. They said 13 didn't exist anymore. Owen pointed upward. But it still does, just not where it should. Claire thought of the elevator stopping there, the dim green hall, the silence. A cold pressure spread through her chest. From somewhere deeper in the basement, a service bell rang. One sharp ding. Claire and Owen both froze. Then came a woman's voice over a hidden speaker somewhere in the ceiling. Old-fashioned. Calm. Bell service to the 13th floor. Claire looked at Owen. His face had gone gray. "That doesn't happen anymore," he whispered. "But it just did." He shook his head hard. "That doesn't happen unless—" A second voice cut in. Male. Smooth. "Mr. Vale." "Owen." The sound came from nowhere and everywhere in the basement at once. "You've taken something that belongs upstairs." Owen grabbed Claire's arm. "Run!" They burst out of storage and ran down the basement hall. Behind them, the service bell dinged again. Then again. Like multiple rooms summoning staff at once. Doorways along the corridor began opening as they passed. Dark rooms. Empty laundry chutes. Storage closets. And figures standing inside. Guests in old clothes. A man in a tuxedo with half his face scorched black. A little girl holding a suitcase. A woman dripping black water from her mouth. All of them watching silently. Not chasing. Just waiting. Owen led Claire to a steel door at the end of the corridor marked Service Exit. He yanked the handle. Nothing. He swore and shoved again. Still nothing. "Help me!" he snapped. Claire grabbed the bar. Together they threw their weight against it. The door groaned, then gave an inch. Cold air spilled through the gap. Outside. Real outside. Then a voice drifted up behind them. "Claire?" She froze. Her father's voice. Her heart slammed so hard she almost choked. Impossible. Her father had been dead 5 years. No sound. Then again, more clearly. "Finish it." The balcony light blinked. And she was gone. Owen stared at the moving luggage cart. No. Claire looked at him. "What?" 1308 is where she died. "Who?" "The owner's wife, Evelyn Blackthorne. They say she threw herself from the 13th floor the night of the fire." Claire thought of the woman in the restaurant. The warning. The face on the balcony. Not owner's wife. Or maybe yes. Maybe all of it. Nothing felt separate anymore. The cart rolled the final few feet and stopped in front of them. The key lay waiting on the silver tray. Claire picked it up. The brass was ice cold. The second she touched it, the service door behind her unlocked with a heavy clunk. Piano music flooded through. Owen whispered, "I think it wants us upstairs." Claire looked at the key. 1308. Every instinct screamed not to go. But another feeling had started to take shape under the terror. A terrible understanding. This night was not about escaping one hallway or one room. It wanted something. And maybe the only way out was to give it that. "We go up," she said. Owen stared at her like she was insane. Then the alley lights went out. Something breathed in the darkness farther down. Owen nodded quickly. "Up," he said. They went back in. The basement had changed again. No storage corridors now, just one long hall with striped wallpaper and chandeliers hanging where concrete pipes should have been. A hotel hallway built underneath the hotel like a buried memory. At the end waited an elevator. Its doors stood open. Warm amber light inside. Mr. Vale stood beside it, one hand resting lightly on the frame. "Miss Donnelly," he said. His tone was welcoming, almost kind. "I'm afraid your room has been upgraded." Claire held up the key. "Room 1308? Mr. Vale's smile widened just a little. "Your final destination, yes." Owen stepped back. "No." Mr. Vale turned his head toward him. "Bellhops are to assist guests with their luggage." His voice deepened slightly on the last word. Not louder, just less human. Owen looked sick. Claire grabbed his sleeve. "Come on." Together they stepped into the elevator. Mr. Vale did not enter. He only pressed the button for 13. As the doors slid closed, he said, "Some guests never learn when their stay is over." The elevator began to rise. The floor numbers passed slowly. 1, 1, 2, 3. Then, much faster. 8, 11, 12. The lights dimmed. A faint smell of smoke filled the elevator. Then 13 glowed. The car stopped. When the doors opened, hot air rushed in. Claire almost staggered back. Not flames. Not exactly. Just heat. The hallway beyond was lit by flickering sconces and lined with dark green wallpaper blistered by old fire damage. A long runner carpet stretched away with a burned pattern down the center. Every door on the floor stood shut. Some blackened around the edges. A chandelier at the far end swung slowly, though there was no breeze. Claire stepped out first. The air smelled like smoke, perfume, and wet plaster. Owen followed. Behind them, the elevator doors closed on their own. The silence that followed felt absolute. No hum, no distant lobby noises, no city. Just the hallway. Room numbers marched along the walls. 1301, 1302, 1304. Some missing, some hanging crooked. At 1308, they stopped. The door was dark oak. Unlike the others, it looked untouched by fire. Perfect. Polished. The brass numbers shone. Claire's hand trembled as she lifted the key. "What if opening it is the worst thing we can do?" Owen whispered. Claire stared at the keyhole. "What if not opening it is why this keeps happening?" She slid the key in. It turned easily. The latch clicked. Then the door swung inward by itself. Room 1308 was beautiful. Too beautiful. A suite. Large bed, sitting area, fireplace, heavy curtains, silver-framed mirrors, a vanity table covered in perfume bottles and hairbrushes, like someone had just stepped out. A record player in the corner turned slowly, though no music played. Claire stepped in. The room was warmer than the hall, almost suffocatingly warm. Owen came in behind her. The door shut, locking with a quiet click. At the far end of the suite, beside the window, stood a woman. Tall, dark evening gown, hair pinned up. One hand resting on the curtain, her back to them. Claire knew before she turned. Evelyn Blackthorne. Or what remained of her. The woman slowly faced them. Her face was not burned, not drowned, not decayed. She looked alive, painfully alive. Beautiful in the old portrait way, but her eyes looked like someone who had been waiting too long, much too long. "You came back," she said softly. Claire glanced at Owen. He looked as stunned as she felt. Evelyn's gaze settled on the key in Claire's hand. "They always do eventually." Claire forced words out. "What do you want?" Evelyn smiled sadly. "To leave." A sound came from the bedroom side of the suite. A door opening. Heavy footsteps. Then another figure emerged. A man in an old tailored suit. Tall, broad-shouldered. One side of his face charred black down to the jaw. The other side handsome and calm. His eyes fixed on Evelyn. Not on Claire. Not on Owen. Only Evelyn. "Come away from the window," he said. His tone was quiet, commanding, intimate in the ugliest possible way. Evelyn's whole body stiffened. Claire understood immediately. This was not a haunting built from random tragedy. This was something meaner, something personal. The man stepped closer. The air in the room thickened with smoke. "You embarrass yourself," he told Evelyn. Evelyn's voice trembled. "You locked them in." The man ignored that. Instead, he looked at Claire and Owen for the first time. Hotel owner. The real Blackthorne. His smile was colder than Mr. Vale's. "Guests shouldn't wander into private rooms," he said. Claire backed up a step. Owen grabbed a silver candlestick from the mantel. The owner's eyes flicked to him. For a split second, contempt. Then amusement. "There's nowhere else to go," he said. The walls of the suite creaked. The wallpaper darkened. A faint orange glow appeared beneath the bedroom door. Fire. Or memory of fire. Evelyn looked at Claire desperately. "He keeps the door closed," she whispered. "He keeps all of them here." Claire's eyes darted around the room. "What door?" Evelyn pointed toward the writing desk. At first, Claire saw nothing. Then the mirror above the desk shifted slightly, and behind its reflection, a seam in the wall appeared. A hidden door. Blackthorne stepped forward. No. The temperature spiked. Smoke coiled along the ceiling. The bedroom glow turned brighter. Owen swung the candlestick at Blackthorne's head. It passed partly through him, but connected enough to stagger him sideways. Enough. Claire lunged for the desk, yanked the mirror aside, and found the hidden latch. It opened into a narrow service shaft lined with small locked metal doors. Each door had a room number. 1310, 1305, 1208, 1103. So many. From behind those tiny doors came sounds. Weeping. Whispers. Knocking. Pleading voices. The hotel was keeping them. Collecting them. Evelyn cried out, "The master key!" Claire looked at the black tag in her hand. 1308. Not just a room key, a control. Blackthorne roared, a sound louder and less human than anything yet. The suite walls burst with lines of firelight. Mr. Vale appeared in the doorway behind them, smiling wider than ever. The hallway beyond filled with figures, guests, staff, burned faces, sodden clothes, silent eyes, waiting. "Close it," Blackthorn said. Mr. Vale moved toward Claire. Fast now. Too fast. Owen tackled him. The two crashed into a side table. Mr. Vale's face split at the cheek, revealing something black and hollow beneath the skin. Claire shoved the key into the first little metal lock. Turned. The door sprang open. A blast of freezing air hit her. Then a woman's voice gasped in relief. A shadow slipped out and vanished through the ceiling like smoke. Another door. Turn. Open. A man's cry. Gone. Again. Again. Every lock she opened sent another trapped presence rushing free. The suite shook harder. Blackthorn staggered as if each opening weakened him. "No!" He lunged at Claire. Evelyn stepped in front of him. For the first time, her face changed. Not sad anymore. Furious. All the waiting had finally found teeth. "You don't own them," she hissed. She seized him by the shoulders. Fire erupted between them, not destroying her, revealing him. His human shape burned away, leaving something charred and swollen and hateful beneath. A soul shaped by greed and locked doors. Claire kept opening the metal cells, one after another. Whispers turning to wind, cries turning to release. Mr. Vale shrieked as Owen held him back. His body seemed to unravel at the edges. Claire reached the final lock, largest of all. No room number, just a brass plate with a single word engraved. Lobby. She jammed the key in, turned. The entire suite went silent. Then the hidden shaft doors all blew open at once. A storm of voices and shadows tore through the room. The windows burst inward, curtains snapped like sails. The chandelier exploded in sparks. Blackthorn screamed as dozens of hands, burned hands, wet hands, invisible hands, dragged him backward toward the bedroom fire. Mr. Vale collapsed into a pile of ash and old hotel keys. Owen hit the floor, coughing. Evelyn turned to Claire one last time. For the first time, she looked peaceful. The heat in the suite was fading. The smoke thinning. "Now leave," she said. Claire didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed Owen and pulled him toward the door. The hallway outside was breaking apart. Wallpaper peeling. Lights strobing. Doors flying open as pale figures streamed out and rushed past them without harm. Not toward Claire. Toward the elevators. Toward the lobby. Toward the world. Claire and Owen ran with them. The corridor stretched and twisted as they moved. For one terrible second, Claire thought they'd never make it. Then, the elevator doors opened at the far end. Not old wood and mirrors now. Just bright, clean, stainless steel. Modern. Normal. They threw themselves inside. The doors shut. Claire hit one. The elevator dropped hard enough to make their stomachs lurch. Then it opened. Lobby. Real lobby. Marble floor. Chandelier. Front desk. Empty. The grandfather clock showed 1:59 a.m. No Mr. Vale. No guests. No piano music. Claire and Owen ran through the revolving door into the street. Cold night air. Traffic. A taxi passing. Somebody laughing across the intersection. The normal world slammed back around them so suddenly Claire almost collapsed. She turned. The Blackthorn Hotel stood behind them. Dark. Still. Most windows black. Except one. On an upper floor, a window glowed softly. A woman stood there. Silhouette only. One hand raised in farewell. Then the light went out.